Coming up next, former homicide detective James Leavelle revisits the morning Lee Harvey Oswald was shot by Jack Ruby in Dallas, Texas, on November 24, 1963. Mr. Oswald was in police custody, the suspect in the assassination of President John F. Kennedy in Dallas 2 days earlier. Mr. Leavelle was his police escort when Jack Ruby killed Mr. Oswald in the midst of police, reporters, and live television cameras. James Leavelle spoke at the National Law Enforcement Museum here in Washington. This lasts about an hour.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome. My name is Craig Floyd. I have the honor of being the host this evening. I am also privileged to serve as the chairman of the National Law Enforcement Officers Memorial Fund and heading up the effort to build our first ever National Law Enforcement Museum. And tonight we have a very special occasion. This is something that we have never done before, but hopefully this will be the beginning of many of these types of gatherings. We call it a witness to history. There have been many seminal moments in law enforcement history, and we're privileged tonight to have a couple of those people that were there and were very much a part of those historical moments, this one in particular occurring back in 1963. And one of the jobs of the National Law Enforcement Museum that we're building is to capture the history of American law enforcement, to tell the stories that have really never been told before. And we need to capture those moments for future generations, and we can't afford to lose that rich history that's been such a great part of this nation's history. Tonight, we're very privileged, and I'm going to acknowledge him right off the bat, to have James, better known as Jim Leavelle, here with us. Jim served as a homicide detective in Dallas, Texas, on that fateful day, November 22nd, 1963, and the days that followed. And we've asked him to come all the way from Texas to share his story with this gathering. And later this week, he'll be sharing that same story with an oral historian that we've been very fortunate to have with us, Dr. Brian Williams, this professional oral historian. Is Dr. Williams here, by the way? I thought he might be here, but anyway, Dr. Williams is going to actually, there he is in the back of the room. Dr. Williams, thank you for being here. Later this week, he will be interviewing Jim Leavelle, and we'll be capturing it for posterity's sake, the stories that he'll tell tonight, and I'm sure many others. I also want to thank the Leavelle family. We have several of their members here with us tonight. First and foremost, Jim and his wife, Taimee. They've been married 70 years, and they've been quite a team during those years. Thank you for being here. And their daughter, who lives in the area, Carla Leavelle, and her husband, Bob Grindling. Thanks for being here. And I think that might have had something to do with the fact that Jim was willing to travel from Dallas, Texas to visit his daughter and son-in-law. So we're very privileged to have all of you with us here tonight. We're also pleased to have a very rather intimate gathering. We've got quite a good group here, but we wanted to keep it intimate. Frankly, the option was to maybe have dinner or lunch with Jim and just kind of have him to myself with maybe a few of our staff. And I said, no, that's too much of a waste of a national treasure that we have here. So we've invited some of our special friends and supporters to gather as well, to listen to the stories and to ask questions at the end of Jim's presentation. We're going to have the opportunity to do that. I also want to acknowledge we have a couple of our board members here tonight. I noticed, I see Joe Akers there, I see Kip Brunk, and thank you both for being here. I really appreciate that. Two of our leading board representatives. One man that's not here tonight, and I wish he was, his name is Ike Pappas. Some of you may remember Ike. I asked Jim, and he certainly did. And Ike Pappas was a CBS News correspondent on the fateful day when Lee Harvey Oswald was shot and killed. It was Ike who actually had stuck a microphone in his face right at the moment of the shooting and asked him, how you feel, Lee? And at that moment, Jack Ruby shot him. Ike has done much work with us over many years. He was the videographer, if you will, who documented the building of the National Law Enforcement Officers Memorial. He did many voiceovers for the videos that we created for the memorial, and unfortunately Ike died a couple years ago, and certainly could not be here tonight, but I know this is right where he would be if he were still alive. Ike loved to tell the story of what happened on that fateful day, the story that we're about to hear. And I think of Ike today especially. We also are privileged to have with us another very special guest, and that is Clint Hill. Clint is a legendary Secret Service agent. He was on detail the day that President Kennedy was assassinated, assigned actually to Mrs. Kennedy's protective detail. And you see him in some of the pictures that we're going to be showing here tonight. But Clint, thank you so much for being here tonight and representing the Secret Service. Yeah. Thank you. We're also very pleased to have the Assistant Director of the Secret Service here with us, representing Director Sullivan, and that's Mickey Nelson. And certainly Director Sullivan, I know, would have loved to have been here. He was had a conflict and could not, but we really appreciate having you and Craig also with us tonight. Thank you. And before I introduce Jim Leavelle, I wanted to also acknowledge that we have C-SPAN here with us tonight, videotaping and filming this entire presentation so that it will be shown to their many viewers over the weeks ahead. So we thank C-SPAN for joining us as well and sharing the story with many others who couldn't be here in person. You know, it's interesting as I turn now to introduce our special guest. I almost feel like you're a little bit like Forrest Gump, if I might compare you to that individual from film stardom. Forrest seemed to be everywhere. No limp, all right. So you're not exactly alike. But when you hear this story, I mean, not only was he there and to tell the story that we're going to hear in just a moment or two, November 24th, 1963, but it really started at a very historical moment in American history, a very tragic day in American history. He was 21 years old at the time. He served as a Navy storekeeper on board the USS Whitney, and he witnessed an incident many of us have really only read about in the history books. But Jim Leavelle was there the day they bombed Pearl Harbor on December 7th, 1941. So he saw that moment in American history as well. And it was 20 years later, thereabouts, when he was serving as a homicide detective in Dallas, Texas, and Detective Leavelle was assigned to escort an inmate from the police headquarters to the county jail. And I think we've seen the iconic photo. We've heard about the incident. We certainly, those of us that are old enough to remember watching it playing out on television and hearing about it on the radio and in the newspapers, we feel like maybe we were there that day. And tonight I think he'll really bring it home. Obviously the inmate that he was escorting is known to us as Lee Harvey Oswald. And at that point in time he was considered to be the assassin of President John F. Kennedy. And that was November 24th, 1963. And I love this quote from an interview you did a couple years ago about the incident. You said, you recalled the words that Oswald said to you as you were handcuffed together. You were getting ready to do the transport, and you were quoted as saying, "Lee, if anybody shoots, I hope they're as good a shot as you are," meaning they would shoot him and not me, meaning yourself. And Oswald, and this is very telling, I thought, Oswald kind of laughed, said, "Well, nobody's going to shoot me." And obviously, he was terribly mistaken.
Famous last words, you might say.
Famous last words indeed. And during the transport, as we all know, Oswald was shot and killed by the local nightclub owner, Jack Ruby. And the shooting was captured on national television and by a Dallas Times Herald Pulitzer Prize-winning photograph that is really an iconic photo in American history, and we'll see it here. I think you saw it in the invitation that we sent out. And I loved what you said. You said, when asked about the legacy that you hope to leave behind in an interview a few years back, you said, "What I'd really like them to remember is the truth of what happened in both those incidents." And that's exactly what we're trying to do with the National Law Enforcement Museum. And I haven't had a chance to share a lot of those exciting plans with Jim and his friends and family. But about 3 years from now, it's already under construction. In 3 years, we hope to open the first ever National Law Enforcement Museum. And for the first time, we'll tell the story of American law enforcement history. And certainly a part of that is this gentleman, Jim Leavelle. And the whole idea is to capture the truth about American law enforcement history, not what we see on television, not what we see in the movies, not even what oftentimes the media sometimes reports. That's a bit more skewed toward use of force, violence, sensationalism, if you will. This is the truth. And tonight we're going to hear the truth as told by Jim Leavelle about his moment in history, the history that he witnessed on November 24th, 1963. So, Jim, I will honor the audience here to listen to you over the next few moments, and we'll hear the story from the man who witnessed history, Jim Leavelle, a retired Dallas homicide detective. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, I hope I don't disappoint you on this. I do have a tale or two, but before I get too far into this, I want to let you know that Lee Harvey Oswald did not shoot JFK. You let that sink in a little bit. What he did was shoot the President of the United States. John F. Kennedy just happened to be the president. So I'll get that off my chest first off. And you ruined my deal. I was going to introduce Clint Hill over here, and you done got, but
What do you remember about this guy?
well, I remember a lot about that man. I'll tell you one thing. He is the man that you see in the. We'll see. I have pictures of him up on this roll up here. He was the man that jumped on the back end of the limousine and pushed Mrs. Kennedy back into the back seat and laid down on top of her and the president, protecting her, because he had no way of knowing what there would be 4 or 5 more shots fired into that car. But he got in there and was protecting them with his body. That takes a lot of guts. I don't care who it is. I don't know whether I would have that much or not. But I honor you, and I appreciate your friendship. And now they got the clock running on me, so I'll have to cut some of this down. I could rattle on for a good while, but I'll hit the high spots on it. This is the way it came to me. We worked on this for years, off and on, and the conspiracy people also had a lot of input. Of course, none of it was true, but they like to make it sound true. But any time that I wasn't working on something else, if something came in, but I'd work on that. But I want to say up front here, the Secret Service did not have anything to do with the murder of the president. The FBI did not have anything to do with the murder of the president. The Dallas police did not have anything to do with the murder of the president. And Russia, Cuba, and many others that got involved in this thing did not have any problem in it. It was the work of a malcontent 24-year-old that simply wanted to make a name for himself. He wanted to be a hero, so to speak, and he's the one that committed the crime. I could prove this beyond a shadow of a doubt had we ever got to go to court with him, but we didn't quite get there. I'll start now just the way I got into it to begin with. At the time, Governor Connally was a Democrat, and the Democrats in Texas were involved in some kind of a dispute. They had a split. And he thought that the president would help come down and get them together. And he was invited down. And according to what I got from the governor's office was that he at first agreed to come down for 1 day, and then they persuaded him to come down for 2. So his trip, and he was going to make 5 cities. The first stop was in San Antonio on the 21st for a luncheon. And from there they went, and he stopped at a couple of places like the Alamo and so forth while he was there. And then he went to Houston for a dinner meeting and a speech. And from the Houston, they went to Fort Worth, where they spent the night and had a breakfast meeting, and then to Dallas for a luncheon meeting. When they completed the breakfast meeting in Fort Worth, I might add that in that particular morning, early, being November, we had a little bit of rainy, misty rain, and the weather was kind of cool. It was down in the 40s. To Texas, that's a little cool. Some of you people up here might not think so, but it was kind of cool for us. But during the breakfast meeting, the clouds went away, and the sun came out, and it became a beautiful day. You would think that the gods were smiling on him. When he arrived in Dallas Love Field, he was greeted by people, hundreds of people. Incidentally, he had crowds on the other places he'd been to. In Fort Worth, they had one gathering that I think it was estimated over 3,000 people probably was there. And so he had crowds everywhere he went. And when he arrived in Dallas, there was no exception. They had a 4-foot fence to hold back the crowd. And he and the First Lady went over and greeted those people and talked to them, and they really enjoyed it. You could hear them shouting and talking to him. From there, they entered on the motorcade route downtown, and the route had been published in the morning papers, so everybody knew which direction he was going, and they lined the road, I understand, most of the way downtown. And I think the motorcade was traveling at about 20 miles an hour or something like that, 25, I don't know, as I said. But the people were hollering at him to stop and shake their hand and so forth. When he got down in the downtown area in Dallas and headed down Main Street, there again, you will notice when they run this thing, they took this away from me. I don't have control of it anymore. But so there was crowds on Main Street. They estimated several thousand. I don't know how many was there either, but several thousand. And then I can't see what you got here.
See that? Fort Worth.
This is Fort Worth here. Yes. Catch up with me. Because you're cutting me short. So there's the Love Field area, and if you look pretty close there, here, let me get me a spotter here. I think I got one in my pocket, maybe. I got one here, then. You'll see. What'd you do with my picture?
Back to that one there.
There it is.
Yeah, right here, you'll see a familiar man right there who is sitting here in the crowd tonight. I'm pretty sure that's him. And so anywhere you see Jackie, you're going to see his shadow there, because he stayed with her. And he was her protector, and he done a great job of it. So every time you see her, he won't be far away, that's for sure. But anyway, when they got to Houston Street and had to make the short turn to the right to pick up Elm Street, headed out to the Trade Mart where the luncheon was going to be held. Now, that's where they arrived at Love Field. Come on, catch up with me now. We'll go ahead here. I missed some of my notes, and I noticed when I got here I'd left them behind. I guess that's an old man's problem happened, but I want to tell you that old men got a lot on the ball. We just can't bounce it, that's all. So I'm kind of like an old man was walking in the park. He heard somebody talking to him, and I'm waiting for them to catch up. I'll just tell this story. So they heard somebody talking to him, and he looked all around. He didn't see anybody, and finally he heard the voice saying, come on back here and talk to me. Look on the ground. I'm a frog. So he walked back, and sure enough, there was a frog. And the frog said, pick me up. So the old man picked him up, and the frog says, kiss me, and I'll turn into a beautiful maiden, and I'll be your slave the rest of your life. Old man, oh, well, that sounds pretty good. And he put it in his pocket and started off, and the frog started hollering, wait a minute, talk to me. Let me talk to you. So he stopped. The frog said, didn't you hear what I said? That if you kissed me, I would turn into a beautiful maiden, and I'd be your sex slave for the rest of your life? Oh, man, yeah, I heard that. But at my age, I'd rather have a talking frog. Well, I see you laughing out there. One or two out there is already up about that age, too. So, yeah. But anyway. Anyway, when they made the turn, and that's the beginning. That's the beginning right there, going down Main Street. And this is the street this is part of Main Street, but the head of it. Now here's a crowd. You can see here that they said that the rumor got started, of course, that he was hated in Texas, and they got a rumor started that you better be careful because you get in trouble down there, and so that and what have you. Well, I talked with many people afterwards, and there's a lot of people that some said they did vote for him, some said they didn't, but all of them said I didn't hate him enough that I would cause him any harm or anything. But I wondered where that story got started, and I tried to find out. And Senator McClellan come up with a statement that I think where it got started. He told the president before he came, he said, you need to be careful when you go down there. You might get in trouble or cause more trouble or something. But he explained his statements by saying, I was talking about the split in the Democrats in Texas. If you went down and took over one side or the other, you'd probably create a bigger division than you had. So he said, that's what I meant. It wasn't nothing about shooting him or what have you. So I think that's one of those stories that it was retold and told, and the more time it's told, the rougher it gets. I think that's how that come out. I have no way of proving it, but it sounds to me that's the only solution I can figure out. All right. And here is the triple underpass where well, here they come down Main Street here. I can't, that light's kind of blinding me, but it's this is where you come over and come down Elm Street here. This is your school book depository over here on this corner, and they come right down this alley here. There was 3 shots that rang out from the school book depository as they came by at the end of a very successful motorcade, and Mrs. Conley turned to the president and said, you can't say they don't love you in Dallas. And he agreed with her. And that was just prior to the shot, according to her, the first shot. And at the second shot, and 2 more shots rang out. If you come on down a little further with that, that's before the first shot. This is the first shot. You see everybody looking over to the right. And here's the second one. You see Clint running, jumping on the back of the car right here. And there he is there. I said it takes a very brave man to do what he did, not knowing whether or not there'd be other shots fired into that car. I salute him every day about it. Anyway, after the president was shot, they rushed out to Parkland Hospital, and the doctors rushed in order trying to save his life in vain. He was pronounced dead at 1 p.m. November the 22nd, 1963. From there, they left and took him back to Washington. They had a little problem there to begin with, because in the state of Texas, the murder should have been handled in Texas, because at that time there was no federal law against shooting the president or any other federal officer. Now, back in 1917, our Congress passed a law making it a violation of the federal law to threaten the president, but not, it was okay to kill him. So you figure that out. But I can assure you in 1964, there was a law passed protecting the president and all other federal agents. But they didn't have it in 63. So the murder belonged to the state of Texas, Dallas County, and the Dallas Police. And the Secret Service had a little problem out there with one of the judges and so forth, trying to take the body out of the state illegally, till they got a hold of the district attorney, and he made an agreement with them that they could take the body back to Washington for an autopsy, providing his doctor, what name, Buckley? Was that his name? Dr. Buckley stayed with him. Berkeley. Dr. Berkeley stayed with him until the autopsy was done. So that was the agreement reached. Of course, when they was in Parkland, one of the first things they did was cut a hole in his throat, put a tracheotomy in there. And they wasn't too particular, I guess, when they cut it. There'd been many things rumored about that. I've had people tell me that he was shot through the throat from the front and so forth. I'll just run into this. I was going to skip this, but I'll get back and I'll tell you right now. So I asked one of the great pathologists, Dr. Cyril Witt. So you remember him, I know. He appears on a lot of programs as an expert, and I was on a program with him in New York, and he was talking about the shots from the front. I asked him, I said, did you ever look at the autopsy report of the president? Yeah. And did you see any entrance wounds from the front? Well, no, I didn't, except the throat. Well, they had him shot in the throat. I said, well, let me ask you this. In the autopsy, did it show the exit wound in the back? Well, no, there wasn't no exit wound in the back. I said, did they find a bullet in the throat? Well, no, there was no bullet in there. I said, well, it stands to reason that if he was shot in the neck, that bullet had to be somewhere. Either it went through or was still in the throat. So if you don't find one, then he was not shot there. That wound was caused by the doctors in Dallas when they were putting the trick in. I always said that Mr. and Mrs. Witt made a great mistake when they named him Cyril. They should have named him Half, but that's all right. But anyway, I've been on programs with him 2 different times, and he likes to make up these stories and put them out. I'll say this, that how's my time going? Am I about to run out? Anyway, well, now I forgot this senior thing took over what I was going to say there. But anyway, after all was said and done, and the my post was completed, and it come out, and I got a copy of it because I wanted to see what happened. And I made a proposition to these conspiracy people one time. They used to meet in Dallas, and 200 or 300 strong every November, and they wanted me to come down and talk to them. And I said I didn't want to hear anything about it. But I finally let them talk me into coming down and appearing on a panel with them. So before I started, I told them, I said, I got a proposition to make to you. I said, if any of you can bring any proof to me at this late date, this was around 1980, or maybe 70 sometime, I forgot just when it was. But anyway, I said, if you can bring, I was already retired at the time. I said, if you can bring me any evidence that'll stand up before a grand jury, I will take it to the grand jury now and present it to them. But I said, I don't want any foolishness or something. I said, it's got to be evidence that will stand up before a grand jury. And of course, what I didn't tell him was I had talked to the district attorney in advance and told him what I was going to do. And he said, fine. He said, if they bring in anything, I'll go with you to the grand jury. So I had myself backed up there. But in many years since then, 25 or 30 years since then, there has not been one iota of proof that there was a conspiracy. So I had another thought there that flew out somewhere. If you see it, send it back. But anyway, well, I can't bring that back. But anyway, they didn't come up with anything. But however, during the break time there, while I had a break, here come a man up with a stack of stuff that a tall giraffe couldn't step over, and put it on the table. And he said, I got it all laid out for you here. Really? Yeah. He said, it's right here. All you got to do is take it to the grand jury. And I said, you don't seriously think I'm going to go through all that, do you? And so I said, what do you got? You got an extra shooter? Yep, I got the extra shooter. I said, well, just for the fun of it, tell me who your shooter is. And he said, it's William Greer. I said, William Greer? You talk about the driver of the president's limousine? Yep, he done it. He pulled his pistol and turned around and shot him, just like this. I said, right behind the governor and his wife and right in front of Mrs. Kennedy, and nobody saw that? Yep, that's what happened. I said, the grand jury would hang me if I took that down there, so I'm not going to take anything down there like that. And he wanted me to take the VCR he had. He said, here, it's all in here. And so I did take that. When I went home, I tossed it on the shelf, and it laid there for a month or two before I ever decided to look at it, and it was full of the same stuff, so I sent it back to him. But anyway, let's go back now. I'll start with Oswald at the school book depository. He had gone to work there 2 or 3 months earlier. He had his wife was living in Irving with Mrs. Payne, and he had a room in the 1000 block of North Beckley in a rooming house. And he would go a lot of times out to Irving on Friday night and spend the weekend with his wife and kids, and then he'd come back in. And there's a 19-year-old man that lived 2 doors from her that he rode with. And on this particular day, on the 21st, he told the young man, he said, don't run off, I want to ride out to Irving with you tonight. And he thought it was a little unusual. He never had done that before. But he took him out there that night. And the next morning, when they started into work, he said he was already in the car when he got ready to go. And he had this package in the back, a long package wrapped in brown paper. He asked Lee, he said, what do you got in the package? He said, curtain rods for my room. Well, like I say, the 19-year-old had many other things on his mind besides the curtain rod, so he didn't pay any attention to that. So when they got down to the school book depository, he got out and was watching this freight train switch out there. But Lee hurried along, grabbed his package, and went on in, and he never did see the package anymore. But the package he had was his rifle wrapped up in that brown paper. We found that, or my other officers found it when they searched it out up there. And he prepared a shooting spot up there on the 6th floor. Now there it is there you can see that. That's where he shot from here. Now you'll see, this shows the 3 empty hulls underneath the window where that he ejected from the gun. Another argument that the conspirator gave me, that the reason it had to be other people shooting, because he couldn't work that 3 shots on that bolt action rifle in the amount of seconds that they figured out that they used between the first shot and then the third one. But what they didn't realize was the first shot was already in the barrel, and he didn't have to bolt action it but twice. And many people, our officers shot it some, and they sent it to the FBI lab up in Quantico, Virginia, and the sergeant up there made the statement that he had some people shoot it that was not expert rifle people, and they reenacted the scene from the height of the shot to the car. Because with the Zagruda film, we could place that within 6 inches of where the car was actually. And he said that he had these people fire it, and all of them hit the target twice, and most of them hit it 3 times. Of course, we knew how fast it was going. I think it's 9 miles an hour at that particular time. So we knew how fast the automobile was going, and that's what he did. Had to say, well, their next subject was, well, how do you know you got the right distance there? I said, well, that's something I learned when I was in the 4th grade. We could measure from where that car was to the building, and then up the building to the window. And what do you call that triangle that goes off down there? The hypotenuse of a triangle. I bet you hadn't heard that in a while. So that was very easy to figure out. But anyway, and another thing that they had, nowadays those trees has grown up. They're real tall, and people look at it and they say, well, those trees would interfere. At the time that happened, you notice that the trees were very small. He left the school book depository and walked east on Elm Street. Well, I was coming down Elm Street, and I got caught in that traffic jam, and I couldn't get down there, so I had to get out and walk. I think I told somebody a little earlier about this. Anyway, I had worked, my partner was on vacation, and I did not have an assignment with the motorcade that day. All of my other officers in there was on this motorcade somewhere or in the luncheon area. And I didn't have an assignment, so my captain said, you stay here and take care of anything that comes in. Well, they furnished me a patrol officer to come up and work with me. I'm backing up on this because it takes this to make you understand where I was. When the patrol officer got up there, I had information of where our armed robbery suspect was holed up. And I said, well, let's go see if this information is any good. So we went out, and it was good. We made the arrest and headed back into the police department. And on the way in, we were listening to the progress of the motorcade. And when we pulled into the basement where Oswald was later shot, the motorcade was approaching Houston. And so the shooting of the president happened while I was somewhere between the basement and my 3rd floor office. Now I forgot, I'm going to ask them again, how many of you in here was at the grassy knoll that day? Surely I got to have 1 or 2. He was close by. Well, the reason I say that, over in the last 48 years, if everybody was on that grassy knoll that told me was there, you couldn't put them in the cotton bowl. There was quite a bunch down there. So, but I had, I thought the lieutenant was, when I went in, he told me that the president had been shot. And I thought he was kidding me, because before they left that morning, I told him, I said, I hope nobody shoots at him, because they can't put enough of them around to protect him. So but I soon they had the squawk boss going, and I found out he's telling the truth. And he told me to get down there and find out what was going on. So I did, but I couldn't get all the way down because the traffic had me blocked up too on the Elm Street. So I got out and walked the rest of the way. Now here I forgot again. We got on the. I'm trying to shorten this, but every time I find a short cut, I have something else to say. So it messes me up. But anyway, when I got down there, and I talked with the inspector of police on the front door, and I asked him if you have this building covered off front and back where nobody can get in and out. And he said he did. And then he informed me that some of my officers are already upstairs searching. And so I knew that if they were up there searching, they didn't need me about that time, because he also told me at the same time a bunch of people had come up and told him that they'd seen this or that and so forth, and so he'd sent them over to the sheriff's office, and they were in their assembly room over there. When I went to the sheriff's office, the chief deputy was there, and he was wringing his hands, and he said, I got all of your witnesses here, what do you want me to do with them? I don't know how they come mine all of a sudden, but they did. So I told him, I said, well, what I need is witness statements from all of them. Can you call some of your officers in to take these statements? So he got on the phone to call his dispatcher. But about that time, 6 officers from our burglary and theft division walked in and said, Jim, we were sent down here to help you. What do you need? And I said, well, I need you to scatter out at these desks and take statements from them and have them sign them, put their address and phone numbers on them. Because I know how witnesses are, and all you officers working in here know the same thing. You'll have a witness change a story down the line. It either gets better or it gets worse. So if you get him locked in on that first one, you're in better shape. So they started that, and I told them, I said, well, I'm going to run over to the book depository and see what's happening, and I'll come back and help you. But at that minute, as I started out, the sheriff's squawk box came up about the officer being shot in Oak Cliff. I knew I couldn't get to my car. Well, I called my lieutenant and asked him if anybody was assigned, and he said, I don't have anybody to send. So I told him that I would take it. So I asked Red Edwards, one of the officers that I had worked with back years ago in uniform, and also worked with him in the CID area, where his car was. I knew if anybody had a car, he would have. And he said, well, it's down in the middle of Houston Street. And I said, let me have your key, because I got this officer down, I need to go. So I went to the scene, took his car and went out to the scene of the officer shooting. And when I got there was a good many officers scattered around, and they had one officer that they had picked up these empty shells. They were, all right, yeah, you see that house, right, there's an apartment house just on the other side there. There was 2 sisters, Davis sisters lived there. And they heard the shots, and they come out and saw Oswald running from the scene, and he opened it up, his pistol up, and dropped the empty shells out. And she told the officers about it. That's the way we got them. And I'm happy that she did, because if she had not saw that and brought it to the officer's attention, we would not have had the shells, because there's a bunch of officers stomping around there, and there's not anything that can mess up a crime scene quicker than a bunch of police, because they can stamp everything down and trample it in the ground. So one of the officers that answered it, he had the empty shells in his hand, and he wanted to give them to me. I said, how many's looked at those? He said, oh, there's several of them out here, picked them up and looked at them. I said, well, there goes my possibility of getting fingerprints off the shelves. So, but I said, we got one thing left. I can get the firing pin marks off of it if we come up with a pistol. So, don't be waving at me. 10 minutes? Anyway, but anyway, we did make, when they did get him arrested, we did make the identify that. All right, I'm going to cut off there, and I'm going to go. I know you want to hear about the basement thing, so I'll go to that. On Sunday morning, we got down there. I got down there pretty early, and the night before, the news people was wanting to know when they were going to transfer him. And our chief, I heard him tell them, if you're here by 10 o'clock, you won't miss anything. Well, most good, right-thinking people will know that that means we won't do anything before 10, but sometime from 10 on it'll be done. Of course, they hear the conspiracy people come back and say, well, if you'd have transferred him at 10 o'clock like you were supposed to, right when it clock struck 10. But that wasn't what the chief said. He said, if you're here by 10 o'clock, you won't miss anything. And, of course, when I got down there that morning, there was some FBI agents and Secret Service agents and even the postal inspector come over and wanted to have a word with him before we transferred him. So, and in the meantime, we'd had so many threats from Friday on about going to take him away from us and do all sorts of things to him. And I had a sergeant that didn't help matters any. He stuck his head out the window of the 6th floor of the depository. He's the one that liked attention, and he's caused me more trouble than anybody else. And he stuck his head out there and hollered, well, he was sitting up here waiting and eating fried chicken. Well, as it turned out, that fried chicken had been there for 4 or 5 days. It was left over from some other deal. And I don't know how many. When that went out on air, of course, it went out immediately. We got many calls telling us what to do to find out. Well, he'll pump his stomach and get that fried chicken. And one man from Iowa somewhere called me and he said, if you're not sure that he's the right one, said cut his guts open and see if he's got any chicken in him. I said, well, I suggested that to the captain, but he turned it down. So that is many of the problems that we had with that. But we had to wait. I may run over 5 minutes. Don't be waking at me. The captain come to me and he said, while these federal officers were talking to him, said, would you like a cup of coffee? I said, yeah. So we walked across the street to the White Plaza coffee shop and drank a cup of coffee. And another thing, I didn't get in here trying to rush. I didn't get in here that the bright minds decided that we would transfer him in an armored motor vehicle rather than a car. Well, the threats had come in then, and I accused the television people and radio people of having a microphone set up in our office because that hadn't been decided 3 minutes till it was going out on the air. And then the threats come in that we're going to turn that, stop that armored motor vehicle, turn it over and set it afire. So while the captain and I was having coffee, I said, well, I may burn one day, but I don't want to start it today. And if they're going to do something like that. And he wasn't in favor of it either. On our way back, as we went up on the first floor, we run into the chief. He was going somewhere. And we stopped and talked to him, and the cap reiterated his objection to that motor vehicle. And he held steadfast to it. I told him, I said, Chief, you know that elevator from the jail stops on this floor because they had the city courts on that floor, and they'd bring the prisoners, these ne'er-do-wells that get in trouble, and come bring them down for court. That stopped there. I said, you know, we could take him out here on this floor and put him in a car on Main Street and be in the county jail before they ever leave it. And his exact words to me were, Leavelle, I have given them my word that they can film the transfer, and I'm going to keep it. I don't want them to think that we abused him, mistreated him, or anything, and this is the best way to do it, let them film it. Well, I could see where he's coming from, but if he'd listened to old detective one time, Oswald could still be down there convicted and having his appeals going. But so we went down, but we got a break because they couldn't get the armored motor down in the basement. There's a air conditioned duct hung down too low, and they couldn't get down, so we had to stop it. So they went back to another deal. They were going to let us take him in a car behind and use that armored motor as a decoy. And if anybody tried anything, it'd be for naught. So in order to do that, they would send a car out the wrong way in the entrance ramp and send it around to get in front of this armored motor vehicle and take off when we were ready and lead it on a wild goose chase. Well, we didn't get there, of course. When I walked out into the basement with him, and I did say, as he mentioned earlier, I told Lee, I said, well, Lee, if you shoot at anybody, if anybody shoots at you, I hope they're as good a shot as you are. Of course, meaning they'd hit him and not me. Then he kind of laughed and said, well, nobody's going to shoot at me. Here again, I thought that that was kind of a confession of guilt, because if I had just shot two people as he was going to be accused of it, I believe I would come back and said I haven't shot anybody. But he said nobody's going to be shooting at me. But when I walked out into the basement with him, the television cameras come on, and it blinded me for a little bit tonight, but I could see underneath. Jack Ruby was standing out in the middle there, and he had the pistol in his hand and had it by his side. And I didn't tell you that Jerry said he went back and looked at that after I told him this, and he said, you can see that pistol in his hand by his side. Well, I said, I could see it by his side. But no, nobody else, the police officers and the news people, they were looking up here at the head. They weren't looking down. But that's one of the things that I could see, and I usually look that way anyway. And he made a quick step, 2 quick steps, and double axed it in his stomach. When I saw him standing there, I jerked back on him. Of course, I had him right against me, as you can tell, and I jerked back on him to pull him behind me, but all I did was turn his body a little bit, so the bullet hit him a little bit to the left of the navel. It went all the way through the stomach, cut the vena cava in the back, went through the liver and took a chunk out of that, and hit the end of the 7th rib over here and shattered it, and then bounced off and landed right about here, long ways. And when I took him in and examined him, I could roll that bullet around underneath the skin just like that. If it hadn't hit that rib, it would come on through and hit me somewhere over here in this side here. Ruby was trying to get off another shot. Mr. Graves had grabbed the pistol in his right hand, and Ruby's wrist was the other one. But I could see Ruby's fingers working on the trigger, trying to get off another shot. But the way Graves held the pistol, he couldn't do it. I picked him up with the help of another officer and took him back inside. And they called that shooting occurred at 11:21 that morning. It might have been a little earlier because I don't know who notified the dispatcher to call an ambulance. But it took a little bit of time for that, but the time that went down was 1:21. But there happened to be an ambulance passing not too far away that had been on a call and was headed back to his office, and he was there within less than 5 minutes. And we loaded him and took him to the Parkland. I rode an ambulance with him and tried to get some feeling on his arm, pulse, but never did. I went into the operating room with him and told the doctors, I said, before you do anything else, I want that bullet out of him. So he rolled him over a little bit, pinched it up, and hit it with a scalpel, and it popped out into a tray that a nurse was holding. I immediately took out my trusty pocket knife. It had a sharp point on it, and I said, I want you to scratch your initial in the butt end of this bullet while I watch, because you and I will be testifying this is a bullet to come out of Lee Harvey Oswald, and which I did several times, and I know she did at least once. At least I didn't have anybody screw that one up. I got that straight. But they worked on him for a long time, and he was pronounced dead at 1:07 p.m. that day on November the 24th. Now, the next day, I transferred Ruby on Monday, but I didn't handcuff myself to him. And when I taken him down, he wanted to wear my hat, my coat, and everything, because he was afraid somebody was going to shoot him. And I said, Jack, there's nobody going to shoot you. In the first place, you're not worth killing, so you should worry about something useless. And I told him, I said, you did not do us any favor when you shot Oswald. And he said, Leavelle, all I wanted to do was be a hero. And he said, I just messed things up. I said, yeah, you certainly did that. But he told me something else that I thought about. Or when he told me that he wanted to be a hero, I thought about something that he had told me 14 years earlier when I was still in uniform. And we used to make his joints down there. He had a western place. We would make that about 11 o'clock at night, 10:30, 11 o'clock at night, and walk around this big dance hall to see if there was anybody getting too much to drink and maybe going to cause a problem. And we'd tap them on the shoulder and say, partner, don't you think you had enough to drink? They'd look up and say, yeah, officer, I believe you're right. I think I'll go home. And as a result of that, we didn't have any shootings, stabbings, or anything after the close because we got rid of the prospective troublemakers. Of course, a year or two later, the businesses got together and said we were violating their civil rights, and of course the city stopped letting us go in and shake them down. Well, maybe we violated their rights, I don't know, but at least they're alive the next day. That's all I can say about that. But I didn't think, when I thought about what he told me 14 years old earlier, then that's exactly why he did it. He wanted to be a hero. He, like Oswald, wanted to be a hero and be noticed. I won't even go in and tell. I know how he got into the basement, but I'll yield to the lady back here that keeps waving at me. So I'll cut it off, and if you got any questions, I'll try to answer them.
Please. I think we have time for a few questions if anybody would like to ask. Joe.
During the subsequent interrogation, did Jack Ruby give any other insight as to why he did it, the motive for his shooting, other than being a hero?
Well, yes. When he said he wanted to be a hero, and his lawyer told him and said, you're going to have to come up with something better than that because that old dog ain't going to hunt here in Texas. You're going to have to get a better excuse than that. So then he come up with one that Jackie, he didn't want Jackie to have to come back for the trial. And that wasn't much better because she wouldn't have had to come back. And then he said he wanted to prove that Jews had guts. And that didn't wash either very well. Well, he can't deny it because millions of people saw him. So we had a lot of witnesses, so that wasn't a problem. But anyway, he never did come up with a good excuse for it, other than just what he told me he wanted to be a hero, which I think he was telling me the truth.
Detective Leavelle, we have a
Oh,
microphone.
get a microphone real quick, Daniel.
Can you tell us, sir, how it was that you drew the assignment to transfer Lee Harvey Oswald and ended up being cuffed to him for this piece of history?
Well, very easily. I was assigned the murder of J.D. Tippit, and I was working on it, and the cap was handling the presidential murder. So we were working together, and when we got rid of the transfer, it just fell for me. He was my prisoner as well. So to move in and handcuff myself to him. Now the reason that I handcuffed myself to him was because of all these threats that we had. And if anybody tried to take him, they're going to have to take me too. And I certainly wasn't going willingly. So that was the reason I handcuffed myself to him. Now in defense of these great Secret Service agents, they felt bad about losing the president. I tell them that even if you had been handcuffed to him, people could still have shot him. I was a perfect example of that. I was supposed to protect Oswald, but didn't do it.
Question.
Sir, if I'm not mistaken, you said it was Friday that this happened and you didn't apprehend him until Sunday? Is that correct?
Repeat that. I don't know if I got it right.
Was it Friday that the president was shot and it was Sunday that he was apprehended?
No. Oswald was apprehended within an hour and a half or 2 hours after that,
Oh, okay.
on Friday.
And so what were the events that led up to knowing for sure that that was him and where he was at?
Well, now you're asking a question that it'll take me this long to answer. We had, as I told you in the beginning, we knew who knew that we could prove it beyond a shadow of a doubt. One of the many things we were able to do, he had in 1962, he rented a post office box, it was $5.95, I believe it was, at the main post office, and he ordered the rifle and the pistol, and had them mailed back to this deal, and back to this post office box. He had the rifle from Clean Sporting Goods in Chicago, and that rifle had a serial number on it of C2766. The rifle found in the school book depository had a serial number of C2766. The pistol he bought from Seafood Traders in California, it had a serial number of V510210 on it when it was shipped, that we got the shipping contracts of them. And when the pistol was taken off of him, had the V510210 on it. And the postal inspector got us all those forms together. We had several handwriting experts go over them, and they all agreed that was his handwriting. And also the rifle had his palm print underneath the forearm. So that was what we would have. That's just some of the things that we would have used to prove that was his rifle and so forth. Is that enough, or I'll give you another handful?
Over here.
You had mentioned earlier when we were talking that you originally arrested Oswald for the murder of J.D. Tippett, and I thought it was fascinating as some of the initial interrogation that you did of Oswald, if you would relate some of that.
All right. When Oswald was arrested at the Texas Theater, see, there's something else I left out. I didn't tell you about all of that, but when he was arrested in the theater and brought down to my office, I went in to interrogate him, not knowing that he was going to be a suspect in the presidential shooting. I was talking to him strictly about the J.D. Tippett. And he told me then, he said, well, I didn't shoot anybody. And I told him, I said, Lee, you strike me as a pretty intelligent individual. I said, you know that we can take that pistol you had on you and fire bullets, test bullets through it and match them with the bullets that found in the officer, don't you? Yeah, I know you can do that, but you'll just have to do it. In other words, you may convict me and send me to the penitentiary for life or the electric chair, but I'm not going to help you do it. And since I had worked 2 other police officers' murders prior, I didn't expect anything better from him. He was polite to me and answered my questions, but he didn't answer them truthfully, all of them. And I know some of the officers said that he was was rowdy or out of line, but he never was around me. So, but I didn't have him but about 20 minutes, I don't think, until a cap come in from the school book depository, and he was getting ready. He'd had them do a head count down there because to see if all the people were there, and Oswald was the only one missing. And being the suspicious type that he is, he said, well, I want his address. I'm going to talk to that young man. But he gave them the wrong address too. So when he come down, he's looking for, fixing to send people out to look for him, when somebody said, well, the man that Leavelle's got in there's got a name similar to that. So we come to the door and opened the door, asked me what his name was, and I told him it's Lee Harvey Oswald. And he asked Lee, he said, where do you work? And he said, at School Book Depository. Captain said, well, you're the man I want to talk to. So I lost my prisoner. He took over from there, and I never did question him any further about anything. But, so...
Jim, I had a question. I just wanted to ask Clint Hill here. Amazing and incredible shot of you spread eagle over the car right after the shooting occurred. My question to you, Clint, if you would, is what happened in the moments after the shooting? You all went to Parkland Memorial Hospital. I'm just curious, you were protecting the First Lady at that point. I'm sure you were with her all around that time. I'm just wondering what kind of remembrances you have from those moments in history.
Well, once the shooting took place and I was up on the back of the car, I didn't hear the second shot, by the way. There were 3 shots, everybody said. I only heard 2 because I was running at the time the second shot was fired. Once I got back up in the back of the car, we got to Parkland. We had trouble, first of all, getting into Parkland because the attendant was trying to bring out more gurneys than he could handle, and he couldn't get out to the car. And we had trouble getting the president out of the car because she wouldn't let go of him. And we got into the hospital. The doctors did everything they could to try to revive him. But we had all kinds of problems. Then we had the problem with the vice president. We had to secure him in the hospital to a separate area. The people that had been assigned to the president, we immediately put them with the then vice president. And there were a few of us that stayed with the president, Mrs. Kennedy. And but there were a lot of different problems ensued. That one of them was trying to get out of Dallas. We wanted, first of all, get the vice president out of the city, but we didn't know how big this was. We wanted him to get on Air Force One and leave the area. He wouldn't do it unless he could take Mrs. Kennedy with him. Mrs. Kennedy wouldn't go unless she had the president's body with her. We couldn't get the president's body to leave the hospital because of the laws in the state of Texas for quite a while after the announcement of his death. But we finally did. But I also want to say about Jim and the Dallas Police Department, they did everything they could that day to help us, and they always have. And the Secret Service, if we hadn't had the support of the local law enforcement agencies, we would never be able to do our job. So, Jim, I want to thank you for everything you've done.
Thank you. Let me add one other thing here that I thought about. Lisa McCubbin is with him here. She worked with one of the other agents, Gerald Blaine, and he wrote a book along with the help of people like Clint and so forth called The Presidential Detail. It's a very good book. If you get a hold of it, you'll find out what all they had to go through, and you'll enjoy it. And she and he are now working on a book from him, which will be just as great once they get it going, I'm sure. So if you have that opportunity to get Gerald's book called The Presidential Detail.
The Kennedy Detail.
Kennedy Detail, okay, gotcha.
Excellent. Thank you. Jim, thank you so much.
All right.
Appreciate it. Just on behalf of the National Law Enforcement Officers Memorial Fund and helping us to kick off our series called Witness to History, a little token of appreciation that I want you to take back to Texas with you. It's got the memorial seal and name on it, and I want you to have that as a gift of thanks from us to you. And thank you for your service to this country, and thank you for sharing your remembrances of that momentous day in American history.
Just